What's up, everyone? Kevin Carrillo here, and welcome to another episode of the Cannabinoid Connect podcast. My guest today is Heather Lawrence, owner of Balanced Manufacturing and the COO of Restored Balance LLC. Hello, Heather Lawrence. It's very nice to meet you. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to meet you as well.
Yes, we were introduced to each other by the lovely Annie Epley. So shout out to Annie for connecting us. So I'm really excited to have you on and talk to you about CBD manufacturing and what you're doing with your businesses.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, Annie's one of my favorite humans as well. So
Nice. So you said you're based out of you're from Utah, but you're currently living in Las Vegas. Is that correct?
correct. We started our business about 6 years ago in Kaysville, Utah, and we moved out here to Las Vegas, Nevada, just towards the end of last year, third quarter last year.
Makes sense, especially with how friendly the recreational THC laws are in the state of Nevada. I'm not really familiar with what the laws are when it comes to Utah, but I would imagine that you have a little more wiggle room and opportunity in where you're at currently.
Absolutely. Moving from Utah to Las Vegas is life-changing. Utah just barely became cannabis legal, and so the education curve was pretty steep. Where coming here to Las Vegas, people have been around and in and new and part of cannabis for quite some time. So migrating here was it made perfect sense to expand and grow the business.
Yeah. I really haven't spent much time in Las Vegas as an adult, like especially when cannabis has become legal. So, I haven't checked out the dispensaries. I've been there one time, but I didn't even walk into it. There was a friend that brought it to me. So I haven't really experienced it, but I hear it's amazing and it's just continuing to boom.
There's definitely some wonderful places, people that are doing on-site consumption and just really fantastic things. It's pretty life-changing to go from a place where it was not legal and then just became legal to come here, and it feels like it's on every corner and it feels like it's just so public, so open. It's very freeing emotionally, for sure.
Mm-hmm. So tell me, walk me through your thought process of when you made that move from Utah to Nevada to Las Vegas. You're opening up this CBD business, right? So tell me what you were thinking.
We started as just myself and my husband. It was a mom and pop business, and we learned the value of CBD and how exciting it was. And so we did very organic things, bootstrapped the business from ourselves, and became pretty decent sized in Utah. And it just became relevant that we were limiting ourselves and the reach of who we could be exposed to, the capacity with the laws and the state legislation and how licensing and registering products was. It just made sense to move to a place that was a lot more open. Plus, we went from being in about a 3,000 square foot facility to a 25,000 square foot facility. And so it was just this huge growth and just an opportunity to really be all that we wanted to be under one canopy versus just retail and or some private label contracts, things of that nature. So it really just, it pushed us. We had to jump. We had to make a decision where you want to be, where you want to stand, and what that looks like, right? And you come to a point in this industry that you either decide to stay small and be kind of fearful of what's in front of you and play it, or you jump off of a cliff at 150 miles an hour to just take it and run and see what you can create. So we decided to jump. We backed up and started jumping.
I love that. We share that same entrepreneurial spirit. It's in entrepreneurship, you have to take risks, right? And so for you to make that leap, you and your husband in agreement to do that is huge, and obviously it seems to be paying off for you and your family. So why don't you talk about the business that you're speaking of? That's Restored Balance. Is that correct?
Yes. So when I first got into, I knew nothing about cannabis or the CBD industry. My initial background was in mortgage and real estate. And I actually came to Las Vegas, ironically, was introduced to a couple of the OGs in the industry and just fell in love with the plant, the concept, what it does for the human body. And I just became extremely driven to put myself out there and want to help people heal their own bodies and take on their own wealth, or health, I should say, while creating some wealth in the process. And so I just dove all in and got as educated as I could, and went into every single conference, event, podcasts, webinars, anything I could do to absorb the knowledge and expertise, connected with doctors and formulators. And it turned out that formulation was just a knack for me, something that grew very organically within me. And I'm an herbalist, and we also do essential oils, and I'm a fan of botany and things of that nature. And it just became natural to put all the pieces together. And the products that were available, years ago, it was just somebody poured a few drops of CBD on something and stirred it up and said, "Here's a CBD product." Didn't matter what it felt like, what it looked like, if it worked. I mean, none of that happened. So it was, just a requirement of mine to make something different. I wanted quality products. I wanted clean, organic things. I wanted stuff that I knew what was in it. It just made sense to tie to the plant that's so healing, organic things that honor that relationship anyways, right? So I started formulating products from scratch, and it turned out they worked really well, and people started buying them. And so we had this retail space where I made my own product. And then as I was going to events, people started reaching out to me, asking for white labeling and private labeling opportunity. And I think that's the biggest transition that we went from, is I had to make the decision, is this something I want to do myself, or what is my purpose? And I just knew from the beginning, my intent is to heal the world and to provide real medicine to people, to give them the tools, to make their own decisions on how they want to heal and take care of their body. And cannabis is exactly that. All the different platforms that you can do within cannabis, whether it's CBD or THC or all the other profiles there, this plant is here and giving us an opportunity to heal our own bodies, and giving people the tools to make that happen. It didn't have to have my name on it to make that work for me, because then I have other individuals who are on the same mission, may not know how to formulate something. They can come to me, I can build formulations with them, or take their passion and dream and help them turn it into realities, and start small and grow big.
Yeah, let's talk about that word, because you keep saying it, formulate. So for our listeners, there's obviously a supply chain, there's a process, right? Mm-hmm. There's a farmer who puts the hemp seed or the cannabis seed in the ground. It would be cannabis. It's a cannabis plant. It grows, you harvest that plant, then it goes to a processor who then extracts either for fiber and biomass to build non-consumable products, or there's a processor that extracts the oils for consumable products, whether it be edibles or skincare and what have you. So when you say formulate, do you mean that you're getting the end oil and then creating products based off of that, or are you also doing the extraction part?
So that's a 2-answer question. So yes, I'm taking finished oils from quality extraction artists that have taken the time to create a mastery within their space. We're getting high quality product, then taking those ingredients and finding other herbs, essential oils, and proprietary ingredients, base ingredients, to create a topical or a salve or tinctures that are custom for an experience at the end, right? And so the formulation that I specialize in is taking the raw materials outside of the CBD oils and then infusing the CBD properly. Different types of CBD get infused into different types of products to make them work and function. So you can't just put an oil in something and hope it'll work out.
So give us an example of like the different type of CBD that would go into a different product.
So we use different products from CBD distillate. We also use an isolate. We use broad spectrum, full spectrum, water soluble CBD. We use nanofractionated CBDs as well. And we also use CBG, CBN. Those are the most popular and what's common in the space. I realize there's a ton of other cannabinoids out there, but we also get to be realistic with what the end consumer is educated on and what they're familiar with. And so each company that we manufacture product has a vision of how they want to launch or expose the end user into the CBD world. Some specifically focus on isolate because their primary concern is having zero THC in anything because of their particular marketing plan, right? Others are more focused on whole plant. We use, we even use just hemp oils in addition to CBD because obviously they're not the same. So it really, when the formulation comes in, it's more of an interview process. Like I would interview with you, talk to you about what is it that you're creating for the end person's experience, right? So let's figure out the best delivery system for the customer as well as for the human body for the products that we're putting together for you.
Mm-hmm. And that's come up on the podcast in terms of some of the over marketing that's happened within the CBD market. It's making the job of the retail stores, the scientists, the doctors to really have the general population understand the medicinal benefits of each cannabinoid, right? I think that there's this misconception that CBG may do the same thing as CBD, when in fact that's not the case, right?
Correct. Yeah. And then educating the company that comes to us, right? And saying, what is your end goal? What is your end lesson? You know, remember that this is a consumer that doesn't have the need or want necessarily to understand the formulation side. They trust us that what we put on that label, what we put in that bottle is what they say it's going to do, and it's going to create the effect that they're looking for. And so it's super important to just vet out that process all the way through and make sure that they're making the right decisions.
Mm-hmm. And so let's talk about, like, you know, going back to how you're sourcing some of these things, and the importance of probably collaboration, right, when it comes to this industry. What is your approach to entering into a new partnership with someone, and what is your view on collaboration as a whole in this industry?
So I think collaboration is absolutely everything in this industry, right? I've noticed there's a couple of different sides of the industry. You're going to have one side that's just in it for a cash pull. What can they do to come in, throw bottles on the market, put labels on things, and just pool in as much cash as possible? And I'm really hoping that majority of those end up getting washed out by the education that we provide to the end consumer. They're not going to choose to buy just a generic product that's on the shelf because it's cheap. Once they actually understand that quality matters, and it doesn't necessarily have to be expensive to get the quality, but end consumers will be able to wash out what's important and valuable to them. So when it comes to creating partnerships with individuals, with companies, there's an equal interview process for them to decide to work with me, as well as for us to decide to take on that customer. We want to make sure that the individuals that we're formulating and creating relationships with understand that we're looking for organic, natural, raw ingredients that are not full of preservatives, chemicals, fillers, shelf stabilizers that can make something sit on a shelf for 10 years. That quality is important. The shelf life of CBD matters. The sourcing of CBD, how it's grown, if it's organic, if there's heavy metal toxins and pesticides, and how it's filtered and how it's processed through. Do you use ethanol? Do you use CO2? Do you use solventless extractions?
And all of that stuff is documented, right? I mean, so when you're entering these contracts or even these negotiations, that's one of the first things you would want to ask to see, correct? They should have that documentation.
Oh, absolutely. And specifically some farmers that we've been working, acquiring new relationships with, is how did you grow? How did you harvest your plants? How did you store them while you were getting them dried and ready to go? Those things matter because the accumulation, it is a plant, right? I mean, it's not just a commodity, right? It's a plant that we take and we're extracting from and pulling from, and all of the things that, even down to the water that's used to grow the plant, matters on what the minerals and elements are that end up in the product in the end. And we're not trying to create a product that I'm drawing a blank, the whole Monsanto thing, right? We're not creating something that's eventually causing harm. This is all for medicine for people, and especially on the CBD side, there isn't really a recreational side to CBD. It's all medicine. And even though we're not allowed to say those words, that's the reality and truth. Naturopathic medicines and things that we can choose to just provide healing to our bodies and our minds and wellness overall. So yeah, we absolutely vet through them.
That's great. Yeah. And there's one thing that Kate got brought up was this notion of somewhat, no, I don't want to use the word divide, but somewhat of kind of a non-cooperation between two sides. You've got the recreational THC side, and then now you have the industrial hemp side. Since the Farm Bill was passed in 2018, allowing massive growth of hemp throughout the country. So, in your experience with your business, balanced manufacturing, have you seen like more cooperation on one side or the other? I'm assuming it would be recreational THC because you're in Vegas, but help me there.
So the irony, when we dove into cannabis, knew nothing about the industry, just fell in love with the passion of it, right? So my assumption is that everybody's going to love everybody because it's all cannabis and it's great. And then you get into it and you're like, whoa, there's some serious divide in this relationship, that the answer of whether or not THC has any true medicinal values versus purely recreational value. It's a similar argument in the CBD world, right? Does CBD really have any medicinal value versus is it only the whole plant that's there, and pulling apart just one cannabinoid has no value? So you get the argument that goes back and forth with it. But I think here in Las Vegas, the difference is that they understand what THC is, and in their label generically, it's just pure recreational. Those of us that are medical patients understand the medicinal side of it. And then there's that small portion that's medicinal, that's tapping into how CBD can empower THC. I mean, they're putting the plant together anyways. Why can't we put them into products or utilize them as additional tools in our medicine cabinets to create healing for the body? So I think that we're just more open to it in Nevada because of the general exposure. But I don't know that the education is much different out here versus any other state. I think that CBD has been either the stepchild that isn't loved, right, in the industry, and then now, okay, we're starting to accept it and understand it. But there's also the people who came in to commercialize CBD because it was low-hanging fruit. Everybody made the assumption they could jump into cannabis to make millions. Oh yeah, we'll just do that CBD thing because that's quick and easy and less licensing, and that's not what this is, right? There's definitely the long play that's involved, and just educating people, just like within the entire cannabis industry. It's the same concept.
Right. And that's kind of my fear with these new cannabinoids that are being addressed, such as CBG, as you mentioned, CBN. My fear is that they're over marketed, and they're marketed the same way as CBD is, when, in fact, CBG is more neural, right? It kind of helps with memory. It serves more as like a fish oil or something like that. So there's different medicinal properties to each cannabinoid. And I totally agree with you that there is such a big lack of education, but we always got to look at the root of why, right? We can't just blame the current recreational THC market or the industrial hemp market. It's because the cannabis plant has been listed as a Schedule I drug for so long, right? And it's even been a detriment to the overall health side of where we're at today, right? I mean, I had Dr. Edward Westerfield on, and I asked him the question simply, what's the percentage you'd say of medical professionals who actually understand and know about the endocannabinoid system that we inherently have as human beings? And he said less than 5%. So when you have a whole huge health and medical industry that doesn't understand or even legitimize the value of the plant, it's up to us to do our best, and we're doing our best, I think, to try to understand what it can do.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I don't think it's that because the education doesn't exist. It's because getting the voice presence out there and getting the right people to listen so that more of the masses can be influenced, right? And so I've had the privilege of being able to communicate with doctors, nurses, nurse practitioners, holistic healers, things of that nature. And those are some of my best conversations, is to provide them as much education to them as I can about the plant, because then you have a trusted, labeled person that's outside of the industry that can start, screaming from the rooftops all these fantastic things. Have you tried cannabis? Have you tried THC? Have you tried CBD? We all have. Those of us that are in this industry we all have our own success stories or sadness stories, right, of how cannabis could have or did heal and do things different. And I get that society on a whole understands the extreme levels of those things, but they're not hearing the small victories of the people who had chronic knee pain and now they're walking or running marathons, or people that were on opioids and regular everyday life, not heroin addicts in the middle of whatever life they're dealing with. We're talking about everyday people who were taking pills regularly that used CBD as a tool, right? And didn't have to necessarily try THC, but got enough results that CBD, this three little letters, did so much benefit for them. So yeah, I think it's more of individuals like yourself, putting podcasts out there, getting education out there, letting people hear from all different sides of the industry who we are and how we can help them become educated and then empower others. You educate one, they'll educate 10 more. So it makes it pretty powerful.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that. I'm just at this point, I'm fed up. I mean, it's 2020, and with the Farm Bill being passed, we all know the opportunity that the industrial hemp market will have, right? I mean, in terms of everything that can be built with hemp, houses, cars, plastics, all this type of stuff. But I don't want the medicinal side to be ignored at the same time and be dismissed, because we're just scratching the surface. Dr. Zach Hildebrand was on one of the first podcasts when we started this, and he's saying there's 150 cannabinoids in the plant. We've only identified 15 of them. So
we're only using what, 3, 4 at best, depending upon. Yeah, we're not. And I think that part of the price issue that we were talking about with the additional cannabinoids, they're claiming, it's for extraction, it's difficult to separate, difficult to isolate. Some of that education is getting the science to connect to the cannabis side, because we have the technology on the other side of Western medicine, getting that to connect to the cannabis side, putting the two together, just like you said, lift the stigma, and let's get that health, organization. Let's get all of that stuff up, educated. And fast forward, we're decades behind because of these legal limitations on plants that aren't even psychoactive, that aren't doing all the things that we've been able to document. It's time to decriminalize and really start getting to work. And we have a lot of work ahead of us.
Absolutely. And like you said, we have the technology. It's really unfortunate that there are other countries, particularly in the Middle East and in Europe, where they're light years ahead of what they're doing with the plant.
Yep.
We have the technology to supersede everything that they're doing, right? And it's because of one federal law that's been in place since 1960, 67 or 69 or something like that. It's ridiculous. So anyway, changing gears on that, Heather, talk to me about starting a CBD business and what advice you would give someone that's just gung-ho and ready to go.
It really, I feel like the best advice I could offer someone who's just super excited about CBD and wants to jump into this industry, you have to remember that there's a lot more to it than just passion. It is an actual career. It is a path. It's a process. It's not only this business, like everybody says, oh, sure, I can go start a business, but we're also moderately criminal, right? We're still not 100% legal on every asset, on every platform. So we have a lot of people that come to us and say, yes, I'm all in. CBD is great. I want to start selling CBD products. Perfect. Oh, wait, I can't get credit card processing. How basic is that? That's, receiving the actual cash. That's part one. Oh, wait, and shipping matters, and how you ship products, and all of these things, all of the logistics that are associated with it. I think people get super excited to get in because they want to make all the cash and they want to help heal people. And then they don't understand the, for lack of better words, the assault that comes onto the cannabis industry. You get beat up on all types of things, from banking all the way to websites, marketing and advertising, and how you can push and
media. You can't even run ads on anything, not even related to CBD. They reject your ads.
It's interesting. Like, the stigma for the supposed easy side of cannabis, right? People say CBD is the easy side. I don't know that I agree with that. I think it would be a little easier if we knew that it had THC, because we know what those laws are. Those have been moderately defined, right? And there's a rule book associated with them. And in the CBD space, it's always evolving. It's always changing. Just at the beginning of the year, all brand new labeling. Why? Because somebody thought it was necessary. So there goes thousands of dollars. And thank God we've become friends with people, right? So yeah.
How much heads up do you get when those new regulations and laws take place? Like labeling. Like do you have any time at all to adapt to that, or is it?
It depends. Like sometimes there's just whispers, and as soon as you hear whispers within any place of the industry, I mean, again, thank God for podcasting, right? Thank God for you guys keeping all of us connected, because when you hear whispers, you start diving in, and within weeks, like you're going to go, one day it's great, 14 days later you're non-compliant and pull everything off the shelf, and you can't even work that fast, not logically, especially when you're talking about people that are investing their life savings. Most of them are leaving some other industry to take a shot into this space, and it's all they have, right? And then it's very disheartening. We've watched a lot of people over the 5.5 years we've been in business. We've watched a lot of people come in and go out, and it's very sad that their concept was so awesome, but they just couldn't bankroll all the changes and the banking and all the things that were being torn apart, and the lack of advertising and marketing, and having to be really old school about how you go out and raise your money,
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I mean, as a serial entrepreneur myself, it is a rough go. Not only entrepreneurship in general, but especially within a new industry like recreational THC or industrial hemp, where the laws and regulations are changed by the minute. And there's little to no heads up.
It's not even necessary to have those kinds of changes. I mean, the plant didn't change, the product didn't change. What could have happened to prevent is the conversation with us in the industry. Let's actually have legislators talk to us, and let's come together to create, what are your concerns? Okay, let's offset it this way and do what we talk about, the rules I live by. Collaboration, right? How long would it take for a group of us to sit down together and decide what packaging should look like and why, and how dosing should work, and what's the best way to facilitate that, and introducing individual, microdosing situations for individuals that need smaller amounts versus larger consumption. I don't think that anybody in this cannabis space has any interest in causing harm to a single soul. I think it's all just about clean, high quality, the best that we can possibly provide. So if there are tools out there that others know about, we should be collaborating to make it easier for all parties involved and the end consumer. It's mainstream, it's normalized, it's a level of expectation that people can count on, that they know. That's how you turn our medicine into a pharmaceutical, is to mainstream it, stabilize it, regulate it, right? I'm not asking for them to do it, but we as in the industry and consumers can create that space ourselves.
Mm-hmm. This is going to sound very hallmarky, but it's basically like it's one plant, and it should unite all of us, like just like you're saying, in terms of whether you're recreational THC, whether you're industrial hemp, whether you're a consumer or a non-consumer, or a politician or a scientist or a doctor, because it benefits everyone in so many different ways. I mean, yesterday I had Erica Stark on, who's the executive director of the National Hemp Association, and she's talking about the environmental benefits of just planting the hemp plant in the ground in terms of, CO2, and how much CO2 emissions it brings into the plant, especially after you harvest it.
Well, hemp is a filter, right? I mean, if you look at the real high level hemp, CBD, we're cleaning out our bodies, right? We're removing the toxins from our space. And if it does that to our body, what if we started at the very beginning? I mean, isn't that why China's growing hemp anyways, is to clean their soils and to remineralize the soil that they have so they could actually have non-toxic soils? What about putting that concept into play here? What about growing hemp in between our produce and letting our farm animals consume this? Getting healthier animals means healthier meats, healthier vegetables, and greater yields and increase in everything.
Because we eat those animals and those plants,
Yeah.
right?
And
Yeah.
those are the toxins. What they fed into them from the beginning are the toxins we're washing out with CBD at the end. So why not go back before they made this a criminal thing? We had healthier humans and less disease and less ailment and, better quality, everything in life as a result of it. Just look back in history, because isn't that what we're basing this off of anyways, right? What history was and the stigma that was put onto things, it was just all politics. And it's so black and white. We're much more educated people now versus what we knew then, and it's time to start trusting ourselves, and putting ourselves in position to do right by ourselves and by our own bodies and right by others as well. And you're right, collaborating within the industry, a lot of people are afraid of it because I think they're worried about the scarcity and the law is going to change. So they only have a limited window to make what they can. But when you collaborate and empower one another, you become this epic force that can make monstrous things happen. And so why not be a part of the hallmark, statement that you're talking about? Let's heal the world together.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And that's why, I started this podcast, just to have smart individuals like yourself who are hardworking, who are passionate, who mean well, to get the stigma removed. It's time. And that's what we're going to continue to do with every guest that we have on, no matter it be a politician, a lawyer, a geneticist, a scientist. Like I said before, anybody in any discipline in these industries, we need to have them on. And I want to hear opposing views too. If there's a politician that wants to come on and talk about why he opposes the legalization of cannabis, or even hemp for that matter, let's talk about it. Let's understand why and where you come from, because we have our viewpoints as well, and we want to be heard.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean that, just because we have our viewpoints doesn't mean that the others that are opposing aren't valid in their space. They just may not have the same education that we've been blessed to be provided with, and I just feel like I do tend to get into that position when people say, it's awful, it's this, it's that, and they rattle off their list. I get my fists up a little bit and be like, no, you just don't know. You've not been educated, and I want to.
Have you tried it? Like, have you even smoked it or even eaten an edible? Because I bet they haven't, right?
Yes, and that's exactly what happens. Even just this morning, I was talking to a young lady who wants to be a police officer, and she's confused as to why it's still Schedule 1, but so's heroin. She's like, that doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. Like, I've seen people on heroin and their lives are falling apart, and I've seen people on weed and they're not falling apart.
They're hungry and they're laughing and they're
Yeah,
relaxed, and they're being loving toward people. Is what they're doing.
exactly. Like, I've never met an angry, abusive pothead, if you want to call that stigma, that label, right? Like, I've never met a single person that's been filtered with anything other than love, compassion, and, caring, very friendly, fantastic human beings. I have not had the experience of meeting an awful human being who consumes cannabis. So,
Yep. Well, I'm glad that the Cannabinoid Connect podcast connected us together, because you're a great human being, and
as are you.
thank you. I appreciate you being on. I think that we're close to time here, but Heather, is there anything that you want to plug? Any websites or social media for your companies?
So we're just getting set up on Instagram. So Balm CBD is our Instagram handle. We have our retail website, which is restoreskinbalance.com, and coming soon, in the next 30 days, so depending upon when this actually airs, we will have Balm Labs NV, and that's going to be our extraction side of the house. We'll be able to do seed to sale all the way through, helping small businesses go from boutique manufacturing up until really big fish. And, just empowering people to get in and jump and just be a part of this process with us. So thank
Nice.
you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Of course. You heard it first here, coming soon. So let's look out for that. And Heather, thanks again. And, I want to have you on again very soon. So we'll be in touch.
Anytime.
Okay?
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye.